I finally started making some progress in this area. Found some more components that weren't the right value, like this should be 47K according to all the service info. More components that were clipped out and tacked back into place, which makes me think that was done while someone was troubleshooting the set. And now my latest head scratcher is up in this area. Get a little light up in here. So, I'm working on this, which is the 6AT6 AGC amp. And it all seems to make sense except for right here. Off of pins 5 and 6, which are tied together, we got a 470K to ground, forming a voltage divider. Then a 1 meg tap that goes off. And eventually over to a 10K and 5,000 picofarad cap. And also a 0.1 microfarad cap. Now I am struggling to find these components anywhere on the set, except for the two 470Ks. Here's one of them. This is the one going to ground, and here there was one here that I just replaced because it was way out of spec. That goes off those pins 5 and 6 to this point, and then that's it. There is nothing off of the junction of those two going anywhere. Kind of looks like something was there and it was clipped out, but I cannot find any sign of the 1 meg resistor or the 0.1 microfarad cap. Now, you might be thinking, hey, the SAMs could be useful. Well, it shows them over here. There's the 0.1 microfarad supposedly, and there's the 1 mega ohm cap, which corresponds to this area where there is nothing. Just a faint trace that there may have been something connected to this tie point at some point. Just a little bit of solder and maybe a little bit of a trace of a component lead. Also, not much going on this lug. Just what appears to be some more clipped off components. So, great. So what the heck is going on here? I don't know. But, if all else fails, I'm inclined to put them back there. So how did this circuitry go originally? Perhaps there was a wire up here that snaked over to this point, and then my missing component should have been here. The 1 meg resistor should be between these two lugs, and the 0.1 microfarad from here. I think it's going to ground. So I think maybe over to this lug. I think this is ground here. And then of course that should go off to some more circuitry. So what I have to do is work my way backwards and see if I could figure out. So I know there's a bunch of components missing, but the signal should eventually, if I'm tracing this out right, it's the top wire here, should eventually go over to here, going over into the tuner actually. So if I can find this point in the tuner, and then see if it's going out over here anywhere, which I'm guessing would be some of these wires maybe. After a lot of poking and prodding and tracing on a circuitry, including going inside the tuner a bit, this is what I have concluded. 1, the tuner differs slightly from the service info. 2, the AGC bus for the tuner is tied to the AGC bus for the IF. So first off, let's start off in the tuner. Here's the AGC line that comes into the tuner. Should be 680 picofarad to ground, a little filter cap, 22K, and then to pin 1 of 6BH6. Well, I've got a 6AG5 instead of a 6BH6, and as near as I can trace out pin 1 from that, it's going to this lug here, where we've got a 680 picofarad cap going to ground, and it looks like there's a 1K resistor from there rather than a 22K. And these components are not in the location as shown on parts locator. Alright, and as far as what that's connected to, well, that's this wire right here, which is going to this point right here, and if you follow these gray wires, loop down over to here, and there's a wire that goes back, and around, and over to this point where there's a 1 meg resistor that I just clipped out, that goes over to here. So if we trace that out, that is this wire. See, notice that I say there's 2 AGC lines here. One of them is that one that goes right up into the tuner and goes around and over and over and over and over, and to right here. And that is that point I just found, right? It's clipped up to 1 meg resistor and 0.5. So this one is connected to the tuner as shown. Sort of. But it's also going to the IF, which should be the second line here, and this is what's missing. So 1 meg resistor is missing, this cap is missing, and this wire does not exist. Instead, basically these 2 AGC lines are connected together. So, what does all that mean? Well, since the resistor inside the tuner, I can verify that. I can connect up an ohm meter between that external lug and pin 1 of the socket and verify that it is 1K, not 22K. And if that's different, I'm inclined to leave them connected together and just leave out these 2 parts. So essentially, none of this stuff's even here. I guess I'll leave the 2 470Ks because they were already connected in there, and this stuff is gone. And yes, indeed, there is 1 kilo ohm of resistance between pin 1 on the RF amp and the AGC lug on the tuner. Not 22K as shown here. Now, I don't see any production note changes or anything about that having been altered at any point in the life of this set. This one also shows 22K. I'm not sure if there's a part number anymore in this tuner. Also notice that the tuner is mounted on rubber grommets, so yet another attempt to isolate vibrations, minimize microphonics. That's why there's also a lead shield on the oscillator tube. These are in pretty good shape though. Definitely, they're still flexible, so it's one positive. No need to change that, and that's why we have all these flexible ground straps. So this connects to the chassis via those grommets. Screws go through, so these are needed to actually ground the tuner. Here's a closer look at the top of the tuner. So there's a few marks on it. Stark's Tarsian. They definitely made tuners. Looks like something maybe 9, and then an A maybe, but I don't see a cross line. So my final something, F16. More stamps over here. I think these are just a lot of like quality control inspection stamps. I'm gonna look through. Let's see. And the riders in the back of schematic, they got some parts listed. Tuner assembly, RF-less tubes. V5941-1. The -1 does kind of make me think, well, maybe there's a -2, and maybe that's what I've got. Well, regardless, I know one common Philosophy with these sets is that, hey, it must have been working at some point, and if that's how it was wired up when it was last being used, then let's just go with that and see what happens. Once the power supply and everything else is all squared away, then if I need to, I can try playing around with AGC lines. Just noticed something else, is that in addition to the rubber shock mounts on the whole tuner here and over here, within the tuner itself, there's another level of shock mounts. So the whole frame is shock mounted from this chassis, and then the chassis, a little sub-chassis of the tuner itself, is isolated from its own frame. So this little thing is floating inside of this, which is floating on top of that. So man, they must have really been going to great lengths. Which I find curious because in other sets like the Admirals I'm working on, there are none of this. Just 6J6, use half of it for the oscillator, half for the mixer, 6AG5 RF amp, bam, done. They seem to work just fine. And Sark's Tarzian also made that type of tuner. So I wonder, well, maybe this was an early version, because I do recall that there's actually a really early Admiral tuner as well that uses 3 tubes, as did the really early RCA tuners, where they use 3 6J6s and just connect all the triodes in parallel. So it's a separate oscillator, RF amp, and mixer. And well, maybe these just weren't used very much or for very long before they were replaced with a better design. It occurred to me that maybe I should take a look at the tube chart. So here's a photo I have taken of the label inside the cabinet, blown up on my computer, and what do you know? There is, looks to be a correction or a modification for the tuner, and it has 6AG5 on there. And also notices the model H196A, which makes me think this is a later version. However, I don't see anything in any of the service literature, any of the changes, any notes about there being a 6AG5 in the tuner, or any changes to the AGC bus. Riders would publish updates, and there are updates. So the original schematic, I think, was in volume 3 or 4, and volume 3, and there were additions posted in 2 of the later volumes, but nothing to do with the AGC circuit. So we'll just see how things work out. I'll leave the 6 AG5 in there, and leave the AGC bus wired as it is, and see what happens.